In 1962, two corporations stole Cuba's most legendary cigar names from families who had just been chased out of their own country, slapped those names on cigars made in the Dominican Republic, and turned that single trick into a $22 billion empire. The cigars inside the boxes were fakes, not tributes, fakes. And those same two corporations now own almost every famous cigar name in America. Why are some of the most expensive cigars in your humidor funding a man wanted by the United States government? And why does the United States accuse that same man of running forced labor compounds in Cambodia? We are going to expose the two corporations hiding behind every famous cigar name in your lounge, reveal the trademark trap that keeps you buying counterfeits for life, and show you the only 3 cigar makers still truly independent. Step into any premium cigar shop in America, and the wall in front of you looks like a museum of free competition. You see Cohiba next to Montecristo, next to Romeo y Julieta. A row down, you find Macanudo, Partagas, and Joyo de Monterrey. Further down the humidor, you spot Punch, H, Upmann, and La Gloria Cubana. You assume each one was built by a different family and a different country over generations. None of it is real. Behind every legendary cigar name sold in America, you will find two corporations pulling the strings. Their names are Scandinavian Tobacco Group and Tabacalera USA, and they have swallowed every family-owned cigar house in sight. They have replaced real cigar heritage with a curated catalog, and every name you reach for feeds the same two corporate owners. When you buy a Macanudo or a Cohiba, you are not picking between two rival houses. You are picking between two product lines of the same Danish corporation traded in Copenhagen. Reach for a Montecristo or Romeo y Julieta, and you are not holding Cuban tradition. You are holding a cigar owned by a Hong Kong shell company that was registered weeks before the buyout. Together, these two corporations own more than 200 of the world's tobacco brands. 200 different bands, two corporate owners, and the truth is, you have been buying from the same two companies the entire time. Their empire was built on one of the dirtiest moves in the history of trademark law. In 1962, Fidel Castro nationalized every cigar factory, every tobacco farm, and every brand name in Cuba. The founding families fled, leaving behind their factories, their fields, and their entire legacy. The cigar publication Cigar Aficionado wrote that for almost every Cuban Montecristo, there's a counterpart that was made in the Dominican Republic, a doppelganger of sorts. No cigar smoker who knew the difference wanted to admit that the Montecristo in his hand had nothing to do with Cuba. The exiled families re-registered those names in their new countries, and by the 1990s, the corporations had spotted what was up for grabs. What followed was the kind of maneuver that wins legal awards and destroys entire traditions. They borrowed the same playbook the global spirits industry had perfected. Buy the heritage name, keep the label, change everything underneath. Cohiba, Montecristo, and Romeo y Julieta were the most recognized cigar names on Earth. Legally, none of those names belong to Cuba anymore. So in 2007, Imperial Tobacco spent $22.5 billion to swallow Altadis, the parent company of every non-Cuban legend. These were Dominican and Honduran and Nicaraguan cigars, wearing Cuban names like borrowed suits. The bands were designed to look like the originals, the boxes printed with Cuban flourishes. They opened lounges and superstores under names like Casa de Montecristo, marketing campaigns soaked in Cuban iconography. The packaging buried the actual country of origin in the smallest possible print. Inside the United States, the original Cuban versions were declared illegal and erased. By 2022, 60 years after the embargo, the corporations were selling more cigars under stolen Cuban names than Cuba itself. Over $1 billion in annual cigar sales. Different country, different tobacco, different families, same legendary name on the band. And in 2022, the U.S. Trademark Board ruled that the most famous Cuban name of all, Cohiba, had been stolen. Now sit with that fact for a moment. And if a company is willing to build a billion-dollar empire on a name it never earned, what does that say about the cigar it sold you inside the wrapper? The acquisitions never slowed. Scandinavian Tobacco Group acquired CAO from the Osgener family in 2007, taking control control of one of America's hottest cigar brands. They bought the Toral family's brand in 2014, ending 4 generations of tobacco heritage. They bought the giant cigar retailer Thompson Cigar in 2018 for $62 million. And in 2023, they swallowed Alec Bradley, one of the most respected boutique brands, for another $72 million. Across the ocean in Europe, the second corporate empire was taking shape. In 1999, France's Ceuta and Spain's Tabacalera merged into a single tobacco giant called Altadis, headquartered in Madrid. Altadis took half of Cuba's Habano cigar monopoly in 2000, bought the giant retailer Junior Cigar in 2003, and then in 2007 was swallowed by Imperial Tobacco. 13 years later, Imperial sold the entire empire to 2 anonymous Hong Kong shell companies for $1.4 billion. Montecristo, born in Cuba in 1935, the most iconic cigar brand name in the entire world. Today, it is the property of a Hong Kong shell. Together, they now own most of the largest cigar retailers and lounge chains in America. Cigars International, Thompson, Junior Cigar, Casa de Montecristo, all owned by the same 2 empires. There is one detail that exposes the whole illusion. For 28 years, the 2 empires have been suing each other in American courts over the Cohiba trademark, while collectively raking in over $1 billion a year from selling cigars. The lawsuits are not competition. They are 2 robbers fighting over the same stolen goods. But it gets darker, because one of those 2 empires is owned by a fugitive. But the darkest part of this whole story is what nobody outside the cigar industry knew, about who actually bought the Cuban empire in 2020. When Imperial Brands sold its entire premium cigar division in 2020, the buyer was disclosed as Allied Cigar Corporation, a Hong Kong shell nobody knew. What that single shell company had just purchased was almost beyond belief in the world of premium cigars. The deal was worth $1.4 billion in total. It included Tabacalera USA, the retailer Junior Cigar, the Casa de Montecristo lounge chain, the world's largest premium cigar factory in the Dominican Republic, and half of Habanos. The deal closed in April of 2020. By October of 2025, the man behind that shell company had been sanctioned by the United States Treasury. The man's name was Chen Zi, a Cambodian businessman. Through layers of offshore shells, he had secretly acquired approximately 28.5% of Habanos, the Cuban state cigar monopoly. The United States Treasury and the United Kingdom Foreign Office accused him of running massive cyber fraud operations from Cambodia, allegedly using forced labor compounds, allegedly earning $30 million a day at peak, and allegedly enslaving tens of thousands of trafficked workers. Within days, the United States seized approximately $15 billion in cryptocurrency from accounts tied to his name. The damage to the cigar empire was immediate and brutal. Tabacalera de Garca, the world's largest premium cigar factory in the Dominican Republic, was forced to drop production to barely 40% of normal. Approximately 600 cigar rollers were laid off almost overnight, their craft erased. Tabacalera USA, the American arm of the empire, was legally barred from its own factory and forced to outsource to independent rivals like Plasencia. And in January of 2026, Chen Zi was arrested in Cambodia and extradited to China to face additional criminal charges. $14 billion in seized cryptocurrency, an entire premium cigar empire crippled, and a fugitive who controlled it all now in a Chinese prison. Every legendary cigar name in America is protected by an exclusive corporate trademark. Only Tabacalera USA can legally sell a Montecristo in America. Only Scandinavian Tobacco Group can legally sell a Macanudo. And only the Cuban government can sell a real Cohiba. This is not heritage protection. This is a deliberate corporate weapon. Once a serious cigar smoker falls in love with one of those names, there is no alternative. A serious aficionado may have thousands of dollars invested in aged boxes and a humidor stocked for years. And every single one of those cigars sends money back to the same corporate parent that owns the name. 2/3 of all premium cigars sold in America move through online and catalog retailers. And the largest of those retailers are owned by the same 2 corporations. Once Montecristo has you, you buy from Junior Cigar. Once Macanudo has you, you buy from Cigars International. The trademark traps the name traps you, you fund the corporate retailer. It is a 3-stage cage built around every purchase you make, and both corporations know exactly what they have built. In May of 2025, Scandinavian Tobacco Group quietly raised prices on every brand it owns by 5%, blamed it on tariffs, and knew trap smokers would pay anyway. So, if you are sick of funding these two corporations, where do you actually go? There are still real cigar families left, but not many, and not for long. J.C. Newman is the oldest family-owned premium cigar maker in America, founded in 1895 by a Hungarian immigrant. 4 generations of Newmans have kept the company out of corporate hands. Their cigars are still rolled by hand at the El Reloj factory in Tampa, the same brick building that opened in 1910, with no shortcuts and no shareholders to please. Padran is run by the Padran family out of Miami and Estel, Nicaragua, founded in 1964 by a Cuban exile. They have survived 2 Nicaraguan wars, 4 bombings of their facilities, and a kidnapping attempt. Their cigars cost more than the corporate brands, and that premium goes straight into the hands of the family who rolled them, not a Hong Kong shell. Arturo Fuente was founded in 1912 in Tampa by a Cuban immigrant, now run by 4 generations of the family. They roll the legendary Opus X line on their own Chateau de la Fuente estate for serious aficionados. You will not find any of these brands on the walls of Casa de Montecristo. You will not find them discounted in any duopoly superstore. They stay alive because real aficionados know the difference and pay for it. And every box they sell is proof that smokers do not have to fund the duopoly. The next time you stand in front of a humidor and scan those famous bands, remember what you have learned. Those brands are not really rivals at all. They are putting on a show of competition, while every dollar you spend lands in one of 2 corporate accounts. Every legendary band on the cigar is a magic trick, and these 2 corporations are betting their billion-dollar empires that you will never notice. And this is happening in every corner of the consumer economy. Luxottica did this with eyewear, selling you Ray-Ban and Oakley as if they were rivals while quietly owning both of them. Anheuser-Busch did this with beer, buying out one craft brewery after another for years. The moment a product category overwhelms you with options that all feel similar, find out who really owns them. Refuse to hand Scandinavian Tobacco Group and Tabacalera USA another dollar for a name that no longer means anything. Check who owns the brand. Check the family lineage. And remember that the only band worth your money carries a family's actual name. If this changed how you look at the wall behind the counter, subscribe for more videos like this.